So Canada just defeated Mexico 2-0 in the Pinitar Cup in a feisty game. What does it mean? Well, let's talk about it. Guys, welcome back to What Does It Mean? It's basically our match reaction set. If you like this type of content, give us a like, comment, subscribe here on the Africans channel, where we cover all African and Canadian content, because we wouldn't be the Africans if we didn't do both. So 2-0 over Mexico. I have many thoughts about this game, and I think there are some things that go without saying, but I think at the end of the day, they got the win. Casey Stoney's first win with Canada. So congratulations, Gaffer, on getting the win. Good times were had. We are here. We are waiting. We are excited. But I think there's talking points to this which are interesting, especially looking at the team, where they can be talented, and some things that we kind of knew growing up. I say growing up, but things that we know with the squad and things we've seen afterwards. But I think let's start off with acknowledging the competition here. Mexico, they played a feisty game, but I think this game has three specific sections. There is Mexico making Canada play disjointed, pressing them, basically funneling the ball where they wanted it to go, making Canada play with their back turned against them. That's the first half of the first half. Then when you get the second yellow, and that comes into the refereeing, I think the refs finally got a control of the game, but I think they didn't do their best with this game, which isn't necessarily saying much. Again, I'm not trying to say that Canada would have won if this game was officiated properly. And again, like I said before, this is a side, and this is a tournament where I'm looking at them and saying, hey, they could win all these games, they could lose all these games. I'm looking to learn things. And then thirdly, it's just opportunities and types of players and who are the players who create. And I think the second half was more so, okay, let's try to play it. It was still odd. They played a Mexico side that was one player down, yet Mexico still, when they got the ball, could create opportunities. And this is where we have to have a conversation about it. But let's go to the lineup here. Kaylin Sheridan in goal, Jade Riviere, Vanessa Gilles, Megan Reed, Gabby Carl is your back four. Then you had Olivia Smith, Josie Fleming, Julia Grosso, and then Janine Sonis. And then up top you had Adrienne Leon and Jordan Heidema. There are things that I like about this lineup, and there are things I think we need to have conversations about. We're always going to go back to the conversation of, can we survive with a two-player midfield? And the answer to me is yes, but I know it's a new coach and maybe Casey Stoney has to experience this to kind of see it through, but the Grosso Fleming midfield doesn't work, especially when you have a team that is just pressing. Right, you need players, and this is a thing that you kind of saw a little bit against China, where China started to turn up. And yes, people say, well, we made changes, and I think that's a fair point to make. But when China started to apply a little bit more pressure, you had players who were turning away from the pressure, trying to go, which is what you want to do. Don't always run into fire, reset and find opportunities. But Mexico was almost counting on it. And there were moments where players were turning around and trying to find outlets, and there's three players surrounding them. So wherever they want to go, left, right, front, they're turning into pressure. And there's a combination of, are your players being available? Can your players do well to kind of play in that type of a space? And this is where I don't think that midfield works. Like, I'm already saying Emma Regan like she has in two, not even playing this half against Mexico. I think they need a CDM as a part, which again comes to a point. And I don't know, and this is crazy for me to say this at this point, but I think it's true. I don't know what, if you need a CDM, a defensive midfielder in this setup. Now granted, we've always said this with this tournament, they're playing without two of their center backs. And so the assumption I'm making here is once they're healthy, right, you're going to go back three, you'll push you push Jade Riviere and Ashley Lawrence into wing back positions. You have more cover, and I think that gives you the opportunity to really play a little bit more defensively structured, and also allows you to add a center back into your midfield, so you're not always playing with two in the mid. But I don't know why we keep trying the Grosso Fleming. Now, again, I'm someone who was a big proponent of a Grosso Fleming midfield with Sinclair as your 10, which was crazy. I think that's also me, who was just craved for any type of a change away from formations. But I think that's the first thing I noticed. Now, when it comes to this game, I do think, when we acknowledge Mexico here still, I think Mexico was a lot closer to Canada than we want to give credit to. Now, people are going to say, oh, well, Mexico played a dirty game. They played a choppy game. Yes, those things happened. In the same breath, they pressured, they pressed. Canada couldn't get going. They've beaten, that's the crazy thing to me, they have beaten the US. We have not. I was going on to Twitter looking at different comments. People are saying like, we got the win over an inferior opposition. I don't think they're that inferior. I think Mexico is here. Now, again, this with me saying, let's not read too much into anything or anything else. But we've already seen two other friendlies where Canada got a late win and then Mexico got a draw against Canada. And so for me, Mexico's a lot closer. And I think there's a conversation that comes with the roster and the types of teams you're going to play. And I think there is a advantage of being in CONCACAF where realistically, all but two teams will give you respect, because I don't think Mexico is going to give you the respect in that space anymore. But every other team in CONCACAF are going to sit back and defend, which will allow you to slowly build up, move the ball up, and then pick your passes, pick those moments. Mexico's not going to give that to you anymore, which means you need players who are strong on the ball, but then also can turn into pressure and find the outlet. Yes, you can turn away from it, but Mexico, how they played that first half, up until the red of the second yellow, they were counting on Canada to turn away from the pressure, and they were just putting them in positions where they were on the back foot. I almost wanted to say skates, but I think that's a bit too harsh. That being said, Mexico is here. Mexico is top 3 in this region to me. Yes, Jamaica can be better, and Mexico, for whatever reason, it's major tournaments, they just don't show up for whatever reason. But this Mexico side to me is top 3, and I think they're closer to Canada than Canadians want to give them credit for. But in doing that, Canada needs players who can turn and create within that pressure, because once they were able to break, and before the second yellow came, you got some moments in transition where you had Haidema turning and going upfield, finding the right passes in transition, diagonal balls away. You need players who are strong on the ball to do that. Now, Jade Rivera is typically a player who can do that. Gabby Carroll is a player who can do this, but in this game, Mexico just took away their breathing space. And I think that's something to watch. Also, like I said earlier, I think Emma Regan showed her worth without playing. You need a CDM as a pairing midfielder. You can't go dual eights because your midfield will get run over with pressure. You need a CDM, which now creates the fun conversation of like, okay, well, where do certain players go? Where do other players not go? Okay, this gets interesting, right? Simi Awujo, I think, looks better not being here. And yes, Grosso has scored, but I'm going to be very harsh here. It's crazy for me to say this, but if they're all healthy, I don't know. Well, that's another conversation. But the second yellow happens. Canada's able to start breathing a little bit. They're able to pass. You get to the second half, that makes a few changes. You bring on Lawrence, you bring on Alidou. They switched out D'Angelo, which I think you needed in this game. Not that Kalen wasn't good, but you needed someone who could play with their feet and create an extra outlet for your defenders. And in doing so, create opportunities. 51st minute, Vanessa Gilles scores off of a set piece. Heidema heads it, and then Vanessa Gilles finishes it. It's 1-0. A few more scoring chances. You see Olivia Smith hit the post on a low ground ball. Again, you need more players who are just, Olivia Smith is looking to score. And I think where do you put her to be that player is going to be fascinating to me. Megan Reid didn't have a bad game, to be honest, but I just felt the whole team was under pressure. The midfield was getting run over because players were just turning, and then when they were turning, it was just turning into wherever they wanted. Mexico knew how Canada would react, and Canadians, I think Ashley Lawrence had a few moments, and when she came in the second half, where she's able to turn and beat the pressure, whether that's great technique, great footwork, moving the ball around. Even Olivia Smith had a few of those opportunities. Alidou as well, turning, seeing the pressure breaking. It's different when you're playing 10 players versus 11, so I do want to factor that in, but still, they were still trying to swarm Mexico and then ultimately they were able to kind of find some opportunities to move. The striker pairing is curious to me. I think there's a conversation with Jordan Heidema where we have to abandon the expectations that we had for her as a player when she first broke through, because she's not that. She's not going to be the next Christine Sinclair, and that's not a bad thing. In a perfect world, I think you bring her in the second half of this game, because now you're a player up, and now you're just like, okay, send the crosses in, get the set pieces, and she proved effective. But she's a player who has improved on the ball. Her first touch has gotten much better since her first, and we're talking about this player as if she's like 29, 30, she's 24, 25. She still has a little bit of room to grow, but you see her in transition when you get the ball to her as a hold up 9. I don't know if Leon is the best player to play off of her, but I almost want to say you want to swap Leon with either Prince or Vienne, and they would be the best 9s to kind of pair off, because I think Vienne or Prince in your perfect ideal pairing with a Heidema, they are the drop forward, or you make Heidema that. But whenever Heidema got the ball and she was able to turn, you saw the potential, you saw the vision, you saw the player being able to find the outlet that she needed to, and I think that's good. But it still comes back to the conversation of who do we think is the best striker pairings for this, if we're even assuming this is a 4-4-2. And so for me, Heidema is still a solid 9. I think if she continues to put up the performances that she did with this team, like in this half when she got the ball, I think she's a good hold up, especially if you're playing a team that is going to put that type of pressure against you. You're not going to see many of them in CONCACAF, but Canada has a full year to get as many friendlies as they can against different versions of teams. And the reality is, a lot of different European teams might put more pressure. Like we saw this when they played Spain, where they just held on for dear life, but ultimately conceded late, and it was 1-1. For me, it's finding players in the style that's going to be able to put your players in the positions where they can succeed. And I think we're going to hopefully continue to see that with Casey Stoney as we go through. Olivia Smith took a beating, so did Jordan in this game. Sonis didn't have a bad game, didn't have a great game, but she was solid. Again, turning in and being calm on the ball is really the wording I'm looking for. Right? You saw that with Ashley Lawrence when she got the ball. You saw the calm and the poise that she had. Same with Alidou. Right? Olivia Smith, to a different degree, was able to do that. And there were moments where you saw Sonis's IQ, but in the middle, I think that to me is the fascinating thing to have a conversation. And I said this before this tournament. I think the midfield battle is going to be fascinating. Now, it seems that we got the I'll say quote unquote best players playing against your best side, because I think Mexico was the best team outside of Canada in this tournament. And for a half, Mexico was the better side. I won't push back on that. You can think differently. I think Mexico looked on par, if not sometimes better. They just didn't have that finishing product. But I'm curious to see what they look like. Also, fun note, if they win this next game, they win the Pinitar Cup, because they would finish with 7 points and Mexico would finish with 6, assuming Mexico beats China. Canada's Chinese Taipei in a couple days. But Adrienne Leon scores in the 80s, high 80s minutes, puts the game away. Transition goal. You saw Canada start to get into the transition a little bit because Mexico was pushing. They were pushing to get that equalizer. And eventually, you kind of ended with that. Nice dummy by the end, by the way. And Leon puts it away. But to me, this team will go as far as their midfield allows them to go. And I don't think a pairing of dual 8s works, because they'll get run over by a team that can pressure them and stay as disciplined as Mexico was. So I'm curious to see what this looks like now moving forward. But you guys let me know what you thought about the game. Who was your player of the match? For me, I'll just give it to the goal scorer, Vanessa Gilles. I think they had work to do, and for the most part, she got the job done. So for me, Vanessa Gilles is my player of the match. But you guys let me know. And as always, I'm gonna stop talking right here.